Okay, guys, so it's a few days later. I was editing that other video and because I continued to film, and then I realized there's all these things I kind of left out and forgot to say, so I figured I would just redo it. I'm actually going to split the last part into two because there was other thoughts I had afterwards. So to pick up where I was going when I left off. So with traditional farmers markets, particularly if they're ones where they get environmental credits, there are rules, and the rules are pretty stringent. And so in those situations, they tend to almost be exclusively agriculture or agriculturally derived. So basically, that means that although they will sometimes have crafters and makers, it's going to be a much lower percentage. And sometimes, a lot of times, those crafters, it may be just pop up events where they come every month or, or a couple times a month. But it's not like they don't get like dedicated space. And so, if you're a crafter or a maker, that's just something to keep in mind is that um, with the traditional farmers market, you may not get the space that you want the way you would like to do it. Because ideally, you're probably going to want to do it. You may want to do it every week or consistently every other week. But with a traditional farmers market, you may not be able to do that. And even with some of the traditional farmers markets, they can be really specialized. So one of the ones I went to in Pennsylvania is part of it's like a food alliance, not a food alliance, but their focus is on, I guess, like food and organically locally grown food. So their rules at their market are that even if you offer prepared food, all the products in all the ingredients have to be locally sourced. So they also have to be organic. So it's really super specialized. So that particular market, they were like, well, we would hope you would grow your plants organically. Well, yeah, and I try to be as organic as possible. But when you're a nursery, sometimes depending upon what's going on, sometimes it's hard. Certain things can be hard to treat organically. So they want you to be as organic as possible, but it's like I said, it's super specialized. So in a market like that, if you were a crafter, they probably, like I say, pop ups. Um, but it's going to be hard unless like you're doing something like where you got sheep or you're doing your own wool and spinning your own yarn and doing something like that. Yeah, probably that market they would let you. But that one is highly specialized. So just keep that in mind if you're going with the traditional farmers market. The other thing is the size booths. When you have a traditional farmers market, usually any type of market, even craft fairs, they tend to be like 10 by 10 booths. But one thing I noticed at farmers markets is sometimes they do allow bigger booths. Now, from what I can tell, I mean, first off, you have to pay for the larger booths. But from what I can see, everybody's not necessarily eligible for a bigger booth. Um, for example, people who have food, I've noticed at some of the farmers markets, people who are like food, like hot food vendors, were like basically they're providing. Essentially, it's not like a food truck, but kind of along those lines. They get a bigger booth, and some of the agricultural vendors get really large spaces. So, for example, at my preferred farmers market, they have a kind of like a permanent tent, and there's this one farm that is there because they take up that entire space, and it's huge. It's not. I mean that thing has got to be at least 20 by 50, and they pretty much take up the whole space. So it's just one of those things that that happens. And if you're into agriculture, you may be allowed to get a double booth. If you're a crafter, you may only be entitled to a 10 by 10. So that's just something to keep in mind. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because at my preferred market, the during the Mother's Day weekend, I was given a 10 by 20 booth. The lady next to me made jewelry, and she was given a 10 by 10 booth. And so when I was setting up, I heard her make the comment, "Oh, she got a bigger booth." And I'm like, "Well, of course, because agricultural vendor. This is a farmer's market. She was salty about that. When I went to the second market where I was for June, um, I said hello to her because I remembered her, and she was like, "Oh, I remember you. They gave you a bigger booth." And I told her, I said, "Well, yes, because I'm an agricultural vendor. All the agricultural vendors were entitled to a 10 by 20 booth." But she was still ticked off about it. Now, mind you, at the second market we were at, when I looked at their rules, I didn't see a size limitation depending upon the type of vendor you were. It appeared if she wanted a 10 by 20 booth, she could have gotten one. She would have had to pay more. She just chose not to do it. So I'm like, honey, that's not my fault. But anyway, I'm just letting you know that if you're going to those types of places and you're not an agricultural vendor, there probably will be a limitation on what size booth you can have. So one of the other things you want to consider is how many towns does the market serve, and what are the makeup of those towns. So my preferred, so I'm going to refer to them, the preferred market, I'm going to refer to that as market 1, the second market is market 2, and then market 3, and then market 4 is going to be the open air one, so that I don't have to keep on saying preferred. But with market number 1, market number 1 serves a very large amount of communities. So I would say that it pulls from at least 6 to 7 towns, and the populations of those towns range from, I would say, 10,000 to 25,000 people. So potentially we're talking close to 100,000 people in that area. Now, obviously, all 100,000 people aren't going to show up at the market, but it's drawing from a very large group of people. And so then the market 2 is one town only, and that particular town is only like 15,000 people, much smaller. Market 3 was even smaller still, because it wasn't, even though everybody from that county was welcome, they were targeting to a sub, a much smaller population. And so because of that, it drew even less people. So it was really, really, really small. And then the fourth one was the open mall flea market type. And that drew from, I would say, probably similar, probably the same pool of people as market number 1. So it had a lot of people that would go there. So with market number 1, in addition to the fact that it drew a large amount of people, then you have to look at the, like the socioeconomic portion of it. And so in that particular market, it's like, you had middle class straight up to very wealthy individuals. I would say the wealthy individuals probably made up a smaller subset, but the thing is, I think it's also the mentality of that county, because it's the county that I live in. And so one thing I could say is there are wealthy people. There's some wealthy people who like to live in enclaves with other wealthy people. Out in this area, wealthy people kind of wanted their privacy. So they have large houses, but they're tucked away. You really can't see them. And they kind of like being far out. People in this county tend to like space, and some towns more than others, people really enjoy having their privacy. Gardening in this area is very big, and a lot of people do their own gardening. Some of the very wealthy people will have landscapers, but some of the wealthy people enjoy gardening themselves. And as a matter of fact, sometimes that's why they wanted the space. And so in this area, like if you go to some of the big box stores, even some of the other independent garden centers on, especially on Saturday, you would think they were giving something away, because it's huge crowds. The lines are very long. People aren't just buying a plant here or there. They're literally coming in with carts, sometimes a couple of carts. Like a wife will have a cart, full of plants. A husband will have one of those flat trays, with hardscaping materials. So gardening in this area, in this particular county, is very big. And so, for me, for me, going to that type of market is good because people like to garden. And some people, especially in this area, people liked having their plant collection. So me having different plants, that was just like, oh my goodness, somebody has something different. What do you have? What are you coming out with? That was great. Now, market number two, the one that serviced 15,000 people, that town is like uber wealthy. And so a lot of the people there don't do their own gardening. Most of them have landscapers. And so the people I found that did their own gardening were usually people who were living, maybe in townhouses or apartments, but obviously they're not going to buy as many plants because they just don't have the space and that sort of thing. The other thing is that in market number two, because the people were so wealthy, a lot of them had summer houses. So at a certain point in time in the season, I would say kind of like around, once it started getting warmer, all of a sudden they're not there anymore. So one thing I will say is that when they were there, if they saw something that, they didn't bat their eyelashes at the prices, they just bought it. But at a certain point in time, they disappeared, and the only people who were left were people who really were in apartments or condos, and so they had a pot or two, so they just can't buy. They're just not going to buy. They're going to buy a plant here or there. They're not going to, be like the people in market number one who were showing up with carts to haul everything home. Market number three, like I said, it was geared to a subset of the population, and it's that particular county is a little bit more, I would say, it tends to be a little bit more blue collar than the other markets that I attend. And there was a lot of people there who had very really small lots, or they were living in condos and apartments. So once again, they're only buying a few plants. The other thing is, I knew in that county that, the price point that I can charge in markets one or two are higher because of those areas. I knew with market number three, because of that county, that because of the types of jobs that people in that area have, I knew that I could not, charging what I was charging, I wouldn't be likely to sell anything. Now, at that particular point in time, just because of when it was held, I did have plants that were on sale. So I did make some sales because those were on sale, but I knew fully well that, taking the most expensive items that I had, for example, like the tree peonies, I knew that that's the type of thing that wasn't going to sell there. So I didn't do that. All things considering, considering how tiny market 3 was, I actually did surprisingly well, mostly because one person at the end came and who bought a couple of high priced items, but which I wasn't expecting. But let's put it this way, that wasn't, I've made less and it wasn't at that market. So that wasn't my lowest, earning market. So that's something is kind of interesting. So then let's see. Then with the open mall, the flea market type thing, in terms of sales, I didn't do as bad there. When I did it, that was earlier when I was first starting out. And so I hadn't seen what I've seen now. And so now looking back on it, at the time I was like, oh my goodness, I made so much. I made like a quarter of what I was making at market 1. But of course, even though I was making a quarter, it was still more than I was making sometimes at market number 2. which is the one that was in the uber wealthy town. Um, that one, would I go back? Well, I'm going to say that for a different video, but what I will say about that market is that when it was rain, they tended to cancel the market or kick it over to a Sunday. I can't do Sunday markets at all. And the thing is, if they rescheduled it or something, they don't give you your money back. So for me, like I need something that's going to be a sure thing. Although I certainly have no issues if there's, supposed to be thunder and lightning or like, tropical storms. I have no problems, with canceling a market like that. Just a regular rainstorm for me, like I can't I can't deal with a market that's going to be canceling like that, because at that point I would never be able to go. So it would just be a waste of money for me. So that's something that I wouldn't do. The other thing with the open air market is that it's kind of the mentality of the shoppers there, because it really was more of a flea market feel where things were cheap and bargain. They kind of thought that everything should be that way, and so for a lot of people, like what I was charging for my items compare were more expensive compared to what everybody other things that people were buying. So don't get me wrong, there were some people who had no problems with paying what I was asking, because they understood, oh wow, here's an unusual plant, here's an unusual peony, oh here's it's an intersectional peony, I've never seen this one before. But for a lot of people, it was one of those things, everybody had cash, like I said, it was flea market rate, so they were looking for a bargain. And when they came to my table, it was just they would realize, oh, this is not this is not a bargain. This is not the stall to get bargains. So yeah, so that's just something that I would have to keep in mind. You do have to keep in mind, if you're going to be going to that type of venue, is that if you're offering something a little bit that's more high priced, and don't cheap yourself out. Just be mindful of the fact that you're probably not going to sell as much. Okay, and so another thing, big thing. Is this market a driving market or a walking market? And what do I mean by that? How are people getting to the market? Okay, so with three of the markets, so markets 1, market 3, and markets 4, those were driving markets, meaning that people actually had to drive their cars there. Market number 2 was a walking market. Market number 2 was in the downtown historic area. In that particular area, the lots are smaller. It's suburbs. It's definitely suburbs, but some of the lots in certain situations were almost like, the size of urban, an urban, city lots, because that's just kind of, it's a tight little historic town. And so that market was in walking distance. And so in that town, their main street has a lot of coffee places and restaurants. So people were just out for a stroll. That was the mentality there. It was that people were out for a Saturday morning stroll. So a lot of times they would just walk through the market. They weren't necessarily, coming to buy. It was more like window shopping. Whereas, like, for example, market 1, those people take their farmers market very seriously. They're lined up at 8:30 with their bags and carts, waiting to shop, waiting for the bell to go off so they can rush in. That's just how they are. They get irritated when they have to wait. Depending upon when you go in the season, it could be a fairly large crowd all waiting to get in the morning. Market 3 was a lot more laid back. People trickled in. There was more people, I would say, because it started at 10. There was more people towards the lunchtime. It was pretty dead. But then again, it was a smaller market. Market number 4, which was the open air mall. I think a lot of people did come. It's just that where I was located at the back. So what people tended to do is, I think they started at the, basically all the stalls at the beginning of the market. They started there and then kind of made their way back. So at a certain point in time, then you started seeing a crowd because it took a while for them to meander back to where I was. Um, but once again, it is different when people are driving there, because if they're doing a lot of shopping, and they, even if they don't realize that you're there, if they get to your booth and like, oh wait, I want these plants, guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna take their bags to the car and then they're gonna come back and buy. It's not a problem. If they want to shop, they can shop till they drop because they have cars. They have a way to transport all of that home. When people are walking to the market, it's different. Especially, like I said, that market number 2, people were out for a Saturday morning stroll. So if they weren't planning to buy and they see something, either one of two things would happen. Some of the people really, really wanted it and they would buy it and say, I'm going to go get my car and come back. Which is fine. And a couple of people did that. A lot of people would say, oh, well, you know what? I really like this. I would like to buy it. Are you going to be here next week? Next week, I'll come back with, because they said, I don't have a car. I was just out for a walk. Unfortunately, most of those people did not come back. As a matter of fact, I can't remember, maybe one person actually came back the next week with their car. Now, some of the people who were local, I eventually did get the little boxes. So some of them bought a few plants that they could carry with a tray, but the bottom line is I missed out on a lot of sales because people saw it, they wanted it, but they did not have a way to get it home. And the downside of having people wait a week is that the next week they forgot about it. And so that's something to consider. So now when I'm looking at farmers markets at places, I'm pulling the address up and seeing where are they located. If I'm seeing like a couple of the ones that are in Pennsylvania that I'm looking at, I see they're actually located at a park. So it's a park. I can see all the parking that there's, so I know people are going to be driving, and I'm looking at the surrounding area, so I can see, oh no, people are actually going to have to drive to this market. So I know that if I go there, I won't have the issue with people saying, okay, well, I'm going to have to come back later, with a car. So then the other thing, you have to, that I wish somebody would have told me is that, what I call the first we try, then we trust. I did not get the market. I didn't get what I wanted. I was applying. There's just certain things that this, this is what I want to happen. It didn't happen. But one thing I can say is this, the markets, some markets are brand new. They're going to take everybody. Some markets are very established and they're not going, if you're a new vendor, they're not going to replace you. They're not going to replace somebody established with you, because what are you going to bring to the market? They don't know that. But the one thing I would say is, so for the more established market, they're probably going to give you pop-up space, so maybe you get it, maybe you didn't. One of the markets I applied to, this like, well, we'll keep you as as a backup. I never heard from them for the whole season. So I'm probably not going to apply to them again because for me, it's just not worth it. The other thing is that's not like a driving market. It's more of a walk. It's more walking. I think some people do drive, but I don't know how I would fare there. So the thing is, the one market number 1, I went there for their early market because they had space for me there. The thing is, once I got there, I had a nice booth. I had it decorated. I had like a whole aesthetic going, and that impressed them. And then when they had opening in July, I was able to go back. I didn't know at the outset of the season that was going to happen. So I wish somebody had told me that, because it would have affected, like, in terms of marketing, when I was trying to find dates, I would have scheduled myself differently had I known that once I got in and they, I kind of, had my, they got to watch me in action for a little bit, that would have opened up possibilities. So That's thing number one. The other thing is that, when you're at the markets, even if you're somewhere you don't necessarily want to be, it's not your first choice. Be mindful of the fact that other markets do recruit from other markets. So in market number 2, I had 2 different people from different markets say, hey, by the way, can I get your card? I have a market. You can come be at mine. The one guy was just like, I was like, oh, you don't have vendors? He goes, oh, no, I have vendors. I need better vendors. He goes, and I like your setup. So it does happen. So just be mindful of the fact I didn't realize that would happen, but other markets go to other markets to see who's there, what they've got, and whether or not they can scoop you for their market. So just be mindful of that. And I'm going to end this video with this portion because actually I'm almost as long as the other video and I still have more. Like I said, I was going to do this in 3 videos. Well, the third actually, what part are we on? Like 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5. I don't know. 0.5, 0.6. I don't know. I'm not really sure what we're pointing on. But other thing I wish I would have known is different products for different markets. Generally speaking, farmers markets do not want a lot of overlap, because if there's a lot of overlap in product, that means that nobody is making money. And so, but there may be opportunities depending upon when they put you in at the market. So for me, during, I guess you would say, the main, with market number 1, during the main time when people would have been purchasing plants, like I was not part of that market. I came in July, a little bit later. Now at the July market, the other main people weren't there, but what ended up happening was, especially because of the heat, a lot of people lost plants. And so they were coming to me going, hey, by the way, do you have this? Do you have this vegetable? Do you have this? Because I lost mine. Now, I didn't start any vegetables this year because once I saw the rules and I know what the overlapping, I made the choice to go with just plants only. Looking back on it, I would have grown vegetables. I just would have done smaller amounts, because when it came to vegetables, the vegetable starts and even herbs, I had a lot of people later in the season asking me, did I have that, because they lost it. Now, so that was with market number 1. Market number 2, I probably could have done vegetable starts. I think if I had done it, it would have been okay. There was only one vendor that had vegetable starts, but from what I saw, because me, I do everything specialty. I could have carried different stuff, and I think I would have been fine with that. Market number 3, I definitely should have done vegetable starts. It would have been fine. I probably would have sold a lot if I had done them. And with number 4, the open air market, I could have done that. But once again, I made my decisions based upon the application process and all the other stuff that I saw and where I was looking to be. And so I, like I said, my original plan had been to offer special vegetables and that sort of thing, but I decided not to do it because of the application process. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're applying, is if you're applying for different markets, grow it all. And then once you get there, start saying, because the thing is, it's okay for them if there's a little bit of overlap. But like I said, just have it, because depending upon how things go, you may find that you'll be fine taking them other places. So I think I would have sold more plants if I had done vegetables, and I just would have adjusted what markets I took it for too. So anyway, guys, that's it for this video. I will see you in the next. And so in the last video, I'm going to be going over things that, looking back on it, I would have done, how I'm approaching it differently. And if you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll address them at that point. So see you guys later.